President of CII, Chris Gopalakrishnan, incoming President Ajay Sriram, Chandrajit Banerjee, Sumit Majumdar, and Jayant, past presidents of the CII, members of the National Council, representatives of the media, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very happy to be here to interact with the National Council of the CII, which over the years has played a key role when it comes to taking our economy forward, also giving very useful inputs to the government when it comes to policy formulation, and also working closely with the government, particularly during challenging times when the financial crisis, followed by the economic crisis, did adversely impact the Indian economy. It has been a journey which has been momentous, a journey which has had its own ups and downs. But overall, when we look back, the economy has performed well despite the setbacks, the global downturn, and a very depressed investment climate globally. At the same time, we cannot close our eyes or be in denial that last 2 years we have faced strong headwinds. Having said that, it's clear that the overall growth during the 10 years of the UPA has been almost 7%. We did rebound quickly after the 2008-9 crisis to go to 8.5%, sustaining it again another year. And then we have slipped to 4.9 and maybe 5.2% this year. But it's very clear that now we are on a rebound, and this year's growth will lead us to much higher growth in 2014-15. That's without any doubt. But during this period, whether we have been able to ensure a healthy investment climate, a policy regime which is welcoming and supportive, the answer would be yes, which is reflected clearly in the numbers. Between 2004 and 2013, $293 billion worth of FDI came into India, out of which 176 billion is the number of the last 4 years. Fifth year adding, definitely we will be crossing 210, but I can't give you offhand. We still have 2 more months numbers to come in February and then March. We will know where we stand. But this is because of the various measures that have been taken by the government to promote investment and opening up of the economy further by engaging with the world, reaffirming our abiding commitment to a liberal agenda, to economic reforms, and to FDI policy, which resonates with the partners in other continents. And same has been the case with the trade. From 140 billion odd US dollars, we've reached almost $800 billion during this period. And that I would give credit to our industry, besides, of course, the policies that were put in place, both for the FDI, the opening up of various sectors, civil aviation, single brand, multi-brand retail, telecom, taking it to 100%. We are further liberalizing FDI in construction. We are pushing for opening up the railways for FDI. There's a separate window which we have succeeded in creating in defense, where proposals of more than 26%, where high-end technologies are involved, would be accepted. And hopefully, they will get the nod of the CCS, the Cabinet Committee on Securities. It's now for the industry to look at what has been done. We also need to look at what needs to be done. That would be the agenda when it comes to the next planning, particularly after the elections. So every political party is applying its mind. We have had interactive sessions with the CII and with the industry leaders just to take the inputs so that whatever steps are taken in a timely manner and which have a positive impact on the overall economic growth. But the philosophy as such has to sustain, that is of sustainable but inclusive growth. We are conscious of the fact that national incomes has trebled during this period since we embraced the liberalization approach. We have a healthy investment rate at 35% we are sustaining as a country, but there are concerns over the investment rate, which was fairly good at 34-35%, but now is hovering around 30%. This is where we need to focus more when it comes to the savings rate. Because investment rate, even if we can take it to 37-38%, that should be the objective which India ought to have. If we have to look at the priorities, it's very clear. Manufacturing and jobs is an imperative that has to be given priority attention. We have tried to do so in the last 4 years by putting in place a policy regime and the national manufacturing policy, which you all are aware of, which we have referred to. Today the Finance Minister too referred to in his speech. We have now the Delhi-Mumbai Industrial Corridor moving very firmly into the implementation phase. Two of the early birds project of the cities have been launched, the Vikram Udyog Puri in Ujjain, and also Shendra Bidkin is ready in Maharashtra, where the land and all the approvals are there, and the agreement between the central government and the government of Maharashtra. Two global cities are also ready to be launched any day, depending on the convenience of the concerned state governments. That's one near Noida in UP and one near Gurgaon, the global city. So when we look at the manufacturing policy, its priority is to create 100 million jobs in 10 years, raising the share of manufacturing to 25-26% of our GDP. Whether it's achievable, that of course, definitely the answer is yes. But what India needs to do is, as we establish these integrated greenfield industrial townships, as the national investment and manufacturing zones, 14 of which, not 13, but 14 stand approved, 8 along the DMIC. Now we have moved forward also on the southern corridor, where the progress is satisfactory, and I'm sure that by 2015, you will see major decisions being made on the southern corridor, which has been extended up to Chitradurga. The third is the Amritsar-Kolkata. Before we left for Davos, it was approved by the cabinet, and now we will take the next steps, and a group of ministers is meeting soon, perhaps this week itself, on Amritsar-Kolkata industrial corridor, which will connect with the dedicated eastern corridor. And the fourth is the BMEC, the Bengaluru-Mumbai Economic Corridor. That's the only one where UK is coming in as an equity partner and also as a technology partner. For the first two, it is Japan. Without going into details, I would like to underscore the fact that Japan's interest and commitment to be a long-term partner for India's industrial growth, India's economic growth, is truly commendable. And they have expressed or signaled very strong interest with the increasing presence of the Japanese companies, the arrangements which we have entered, including the currency swap arrangement and the step loan arrangement, They are the key partner for the DMIC already. They brought in the money. And this arrangement India had never entered into with any other country. Particularly the step loan is for a period of 40 years at 0.1%. And the interest swap is that this money can be lent as per their interest rates to the investors, whether the Japanese companies along with their Indian partners. And the limit which was earlier there for 15 billion has been increased by them and accepted by us to 50 billion. That was done in September, October last year. So this is what is happening in the country. There are other decisions which have been made, which create an environment which is conducive and welcoming of investments. But the concerns are that the investment has been weak, including the capex formation. And unless and until we revive manufacturing, what we aim to achieve will not be achievable, and that will have negative spin-offs and consequences, particularly looking at the social dimension, which this country can ill afford if we have to look at stability, which is absolutely essential for orderly growth and economic development. India has to aim, in our view, to go back to the GDP growth of 8% to 10%. We should be aiming at 10% eventually. It will take time. But if we do that, that will lead to at least 8 to 9% growth in the services sector. But it will also require double-digit growth in the manufacturing. Then only this is achievable. And the agriculture will grow maybe at 4 to 5%. The priorities have to be, besides the manufacturing and all that I have said, to ensure that there is adequate availability of credit to the industry, affordable credit for the industry for investment purposes, to make Indian industry and our manufacturing more competitive. And for that, the other aspect is infrastructure. And the third is to bring down the transaction costs. Number of steps have been taken, and some have been completed successfully. When we look at rationalization and simplification, particularly with regard to the FDI policy, the single window approval mechanism, the provision for which has been made in the NMP, that's a reality today. We've also taken other steps which brought down the transaction costs by almost 50%, but we still have choke points, including the container movement and the ports. And that should be the priority, how to bring down the transaction costs further in the next 5 years. Third are the labor reforms. We are trapped in labor laws which are dated, which are hurting the labor, which are hurting the industry. The availability of labor, and particularly skilled labor is essential. And that will be given a special focus and special attention. Along with that, the steps that we have already taken need to be sustained. That's doubling the contribution in R&D, also continuing our work on innovation where sectoral verticals have already been established. Institutions have been created or augmented, if I say IIT, IIMs from 6 to 13, from 8 to 16, from 1 to 5 National Institutes of Science, from 1 to 5 National Institutes of Design. Look at the number of new universities, the allocation on education. It has really gone up almost tenfold, from 11,000 crores to close to 90,000 crores. This is to give more scientists, to more PhDs in science and mathematics. That should be India's mission, because China is already producing 40,000 PhDs. The US, it has overtaken US with 24,000. and India is still below 10. We need to go to at least 20,000 PhDs in India per year, and that we have to do well within the next 5 years. I may also say that when we are talking of inclusive growth, you have to bear in mind that the concept of a welfare state will remain important for India. Even rich countries and developed countries do have interventions, welfare measures, welfare schemes in place. It's ongoing debate whether subsidies are desirable. Subsidies in those areas which add to the burden of the economy have to be moved away, phased out. But there are other welfare measures which should not be confused with subsidies, particularly when we are talking of issues like food security, rural employment. But how do we mold these schemes? Because nothing should be frozen. I have been an advocate personally, and even for the resources that we spend for rural employment, that we should be putting in more money. Yes, but at the same time, bring in skills training as part of the Manrega, so that skilled labor, semi-skilled labor is made available to industry. So these are some of the measures which India needs to take. We feel that generation of wealth and resources has to be given the right attention and support, but at the same time, redistribution and reinvestment of resources is vital, because India will see now more and more people who are getting better informed with the use of technology, the better exposure, and people will be demanding their rights, and they would expect results, particularly when it comes to economic growth, and also their participation. It's not only the trickle-down effect, which is definitely there, when it comes to benefiting those sections which have been kept out of the developmental parameters. But it's also important that the state has resources to do so. I have no doubt that we have not only the optimism, but the self-confidence as a country, and the industry too has, to overcome any adversity and to ensure that we revive, sustain, and accelerate India's growth momentum. And that's where the political parties, the governments of the day, and the industry leaders will have to work closely together. And when I talk of political parties, and that's the last comment I want to make, we cannot but register very strongly what has happened over 3.5 years, where every decision has been called into question. Policy formulation was made difficult. Decisions made in the larger interest of the Indian economy and the good of the country got challenged. We have allowed a narrative which is both negative, hurtful when it comes to the India story, but also partisan politics. As a responsible parliamentarian, it saddens me no end what we have seen. Where the highest forum of discussion and debate, what has happened in the last few days is the emotive, highly emotive issue of a division of a state. But prior to that, there were no emotive issues when Parliament was held to ransom. If other countries have suffered, and we have seen how America was on the brink of it because of the logjam that they had, partisan politics can hurt India's story. It has already done its damage, and this is what the others have to answer for. Because mind you, those who have been doing it ought to remember that bad precedents have been set. Unless and until this is impressed upon all, irrespective of which ideological stream political parties are. We have three clear streams as of today, if I have to exclude the very important factor that is the regional parties, who may not have a national agenda or a coherent national vision as such because of their appeal is limited, but they do play and will continue to play a very important role in national politics because of the coalition governments that have become the order of the day for the last 15 years or more. That is exactly what's happening in India. And I do not foresee a situation where this concept of weaving coalitions in a diverse country and pluralistic society could be avoided in the near future. That will happen. So there are three streams, and one stream is represented by the principal opposition party. Well, I have my own take on that, because what we are seeing is not only a question of party or the ideology. They also hopefully do believe in economic growth, but they have to answer what message has been given when it comes to the foreign investors. Why many of the progressive decisions taken by the government have been opposed by those who claim to be committed to development, committed to attract investment. It's not one but many of the decisions, including the opposition to opening up of civil aviation, opening up of multi-brand retail, the threatening statements which continue to be made, is not helping us. Governments will come, governments will go. But India remains, and that is the most important. So that is a stream which we are seeing, which is kind of an authoritarian stream, which is a negative stream in the sense that it is opposed to many of the measures which liberal democracies have to embrace if India has to continue or sustain its growth momentum. And the other is populism, which is bordering anarchy. There is need for improvement of processes, delivery of services, governance reforms, administrative reforms, electoral reforms, judicial reforms, but not destruction and demolition of institutions, disregard of those institutions which are vital for the functioning of Indian democracy. Because it is important for us to remember that there has to be stability for orderly development and growth, and that in any case must remain the first to be achieved, because without that the momentum I am talking about, a reviving of the growth, may become difficult. Just to conclude now, whatever the challenges may be, my experience working with the industry for a long time and looking at our institutions and the aspirations of our youth, I am clear in my mind that India can be fully assured of its future. Thank you.